What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if female Naruto meets a red-haired psychopath? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. Kurama was annoying her. This wasn't something new to the blonde-haired Uzumaki. Ever since the defection of Itachi Uchiha, she had formed a contract with the demon. Every now and again she would release part of him into a forest, or the Valley of End, at dawn, and he would return at dusk into her seal. This contract also allowed him to constantly talk to her, whether or not she went into her mindscape, much to her chagrin. In return, however, he gave her many gifts. One was merging their chakra together, allowing him to feel her surroundings as if they were his own. The second, he would teach her the jutsus he had witnessed other ninjin, as he called them, had used. The third was helping her to master her natural abilities such as her sensory abilities. The fourth and last was more of a side effect of merging with someone with Ashura's soul so young. If she tried hard enough, she could see images of the future. The last was dangerous as it often left her lightheaded and, on the occasion, made her sick. I'm telling you, let me out and allow me to have a fight with the Uchiha. It'll show him to respect us then. It will also show him to the Torii gates, so no thank you. I don't mind how he is now. Well, I do mind, but it's workable. Brat. What? I didn't do anything. No, not you. I feel an ominous presence. Nothing more powerful than myself, of course, because no one is more powerful than the almighty Kyuubi no Kitsune. Get on with it, Kurama. There's something dangerous not far from us. I live in a hidden village. Nearly everyone here is dangerous one way or another. She rolled her eyes at his idiocy. She went forward to intercept Sakura's fist before it Konohamaru's head. I wouldn't advise hitting his Sakura. Lest you forget, he is the grandson of the old man and has his own Anbu guard. She then added, and I'm sure he didn't mean it. Besides, he's a kid with no awareness of the opposite gender. I did too mean it, big sis. She has a big forehead, flat chest and wears too much pink. Even her hair is pink. At least you look pretty, big sis. Naruto's sweat dropped. He really shouldn't have said that. Konohamaru, run. The boy was wise enough to listen to her and start running, Sakura following after him, anger clear in her eyes. She sighed and looked towards Moegi and Udon. I'm gonna go after them. You guys come along as well. With that she chased after them, only to stop when she saw a boy in a cat outfit and purple paint on his face and black eyes, with something strapped round his back, holding Konohamaru by his shirt as Sakura said something to him. Not a chance. He still needs to apologize to me for bumping into me. He must have noticed Naruto by her bright choice of clothing as he smirked, and said, on second thought. I'd be willing to let him go if you agree to go on a date with me, Blondie. He leered at her chest, causing Naruto to huff in annoyance. She really shouldn't get annoyed by it, after all, she had already started in her specialization, seduction. His comment caused all eyes to go onto her, which was when she noticed the blonde standing next to the pervert. She gave her a once-over and decided she was a kunoichi who actually worked for her title. She wore a lilac dress with a mesh shirt underneath with a large fan strapped to her back. Her hair was pulled into 4 ponytails, her eyes green, and she wore her headband around her neck and looked carefully at the seagull carved into it. Sanagakure. She recalled a conversation the Sandame had had with her regarding the arrival of the Casecage's children some time before the Chunin exams being. However, she also recalled him saying there were 3 of them, not 2. She was bought out of her musings when Konohamaru started to speak up, like I'd let you go out with my sister. She's too good for you, you big old pervert. The boy in the cat outfit paid no mind to what he said, too busy staring at her. I'd suggest you put him down. It wouldn't be wise to harm the grandson of the Sandame Hokage, especially if his Anbu detail aren't far behind. You're likely to get into trouble, even if you are the children of the Casecage. Both the siblings' eyes grew wide ever so slightly. Clearly they didn't believe anyone her age would know who they were. Just as the cat guy released Konohamaru, a pebble hit the elder's hand, causing the 4 teenagers to look up only to see Sasuke Uchiha sitting on a branch. What brings ninja from Sanagakure to Konohagakure, I wonder? Big sis, why couldn't you do that? Whispered Konohamaru behind her legs. You should always look for a diplomatic way out of things and not the violent way out. The violent way out tends to cause wars. She whispered back. They started to talk, but Naruto was suddenly thrust into a very short conversation with her demon. Brat, that feeling is here again. I know what it is now and I'm not very happy about it. Oh, hush you. The catboy took off the thing that was strapped to his back, which Naruto assumed was a puppet since she recalled one of the Cage's children being a puppet user. He was about to speak up when a gravelly voice spoke up, Kankoro. Enough. All heads turned wide-eyed at the boy who spoke. He was upside down on the opposite side of the tree Sasuke was on. He used a sand shunshin to appear next to the puppet Wilder, and Naruto got a chance to really see what he was wearing. A simple black outfit with a mesh shirt underneath and a white fabric going around him. The thing that really caught her attention was the large gourd that was held by a thick brown strap. He had red hair and the katakana for love in the same shade of red on his forehead. One feature of his face that drew her in, his teal shade eyes that held the same pain she had felt in her early childhood. Why do all three of the Cage's children have something strapped onto their backs? Sasuke jumped down and landed beside her, and began to speak to her, however his sensory abilities were on the fritz. Naruto could feel his chakra. It held two parts. One was confused and loving. The other part was chaotic. The chaotic part felt familiar, as if she was seeing a long-lost friend. Before she could properly assess what that meant, as images forced their way into her mind. She stood on a high building, looking at a sand-filled village with an arm around her. A red head, smiling across from her as they shook hands. The same red head holding her as she wept. As per usual, her head started to throb as an after effect, yet she didn't allow that to show. She was far too fascinated to pay much attention to her pain anyway. This stranger clearly played an important part of her future, yet he also seemed to play a part in her past. Naruto was curious. And when Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze was curious, she would go to the ends of the earth to get answers and sat her curiosity. It was when Kurama spoke that she realized why he was familiar to her. He has a tailed beast sealed inside him. Shukaku, the one-tailed tanuki, belonging to the sand. I see his madness hasn't depleted at all over the past generation. The conversation was near its end, so the three siblings started to leave, causing her heart rate to spike up. She, however, refused to let them leave without finding out their names first. Wait! All heads turned to look at her, and if it was any other occasion, she would have turned pink from the attention, yet she paid no heed to them. What's your name? The catboy smirked and replied, Kankoro. She cut him off as she shook her head, not you. The red head. She pointed at him for good measure in case the catboy had red hair under his hat. Teal eyes met her own sapphire blue ones. She thought they were a strange color, teal, not green nor blue, not even turquoise. Those same eyes stared at her with a heated intensity that made her proud she hadn't turned even brighter. The owner of those cold yet smoldering eyes replied nonetheless, Gaara no Subaku. And what are your names? Sasuke, being the ever so pretentious Teme that he was, thought Gaara was talking to him. I'm Sasuke Uchiha. Gaara paid no attention to him as he stared into the young blonde's blue eyes, making her face heat up again. En Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. She mentally berated herself for stuttering as Kurama started to snicker in her mind. Kankoro and the other blonde's eyes widened at the proclamation. Her last name was very well known, so it wasn't surprising. She was the daughter of Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage. Not that people outside the village actually knew that. She distinctively felt Sakura hitting the back of her head in a smack for telling another village her name, but she, once again, paid no mind to the pain. We'll be entering the Chunin exams as well. Just so you know. Gaara looked to her and Sasuke as he replied, make sure neither of you lose before I get to fight you. I will feed your blood to mother. With that, the three siblings left. It was as they left that Naruto remembered the eldest sibling's name, Temari. Now Shukaku is gender bending. He always was an idiot. It's no wonder no one besides Tsuna's ninja take him seriously. The world will have a natural disaster if you ever took anyone seriously, Kurama. I take ninja and others seriously. Ask Matabi and Yuki. But there are people, like the Uchiha, who just need to be wiped off the face of the planet. You and your hatred for the Uchiha. If you were forced out of a seal you had been in for many years only to be controlled by a red-eyed, black-haired freak who has anger issues, and being forced to do his bidding, you also would seek vengeance. You sound like Sasuke when you swear vengeance. Did you really just compare me to the Uchiha brat? I dislike you now, brat. I'm going to sleep. With that, their conversation ended as her team then looked to her. Sakura talking first. Why would you tell them we're entering the exam when we haven't filled out any forms? Simple. Kakashi-sensei will most likely give us the papers sometime this week to fill in. We have the Uchiha heir and the Uzumaki Namikaze heir on our team. People will expect us to participate in this exam even if we are rookies. Plus, we're the students of Kakashi Hitaki. I can only imagine the anger of the people if they heard me and Sasuke, and you by default, weren't entering the exam. All 5 sets of eyes were on her and each one's mouth all yelled the same thing. At the same time, how could you tell them your last name? Do you want to die? She covered her ears at the volume of their combined voices. She may have a high pan tolerance, but she had sensitive hearing and the yelling caused her to hear an annoying sound in the back of her ear. She couldn't quite pinpoint what it was exactly but instead, chose to distract herself. Give me a break. They're the children of the Yondaime case cage, it won't be hard for them to get information of the daughter of the Yondaime Hokage now will it? She raised a brow and 4 out of 5 faces became sheepish, the last simply glared. And another thing, Sasuke, you could have caused a diplomatic issue by attacking the 3 of them. You should be happy the youngest sibling did what he did, or we would all be in trouble. The Uchiha gritted his teeth and looked away. He didn't like to be told off, but knew he couldn't attack her. He looked back to her and squinted his eyes. And how exactly did you know they were the case cage's children? They didn't introduce themselves to us. All heads turned to look at her with a curious gaze. Though Sasuke's was well hidden, the old man mentioned they'd be coming some time before the Chunin exams and I just so happened to remember when I saw their headbands. Clapping her hands she smiled a sickeningly sweet smile. Konohamaru, Moegi and Udon. Time to see how well the 3 of you have gotten in Fuinjutsu. The young trio's eyes grew wide, one in excitement, one in shock and the other in horror. You go through far too many emotions in one go, brat. It give even me, the great Kyuubi no Kitsune, a whiplash. I love the casual entrance of your title there Kurama, really, I do. When Konohamaru tried to escape a tail came out and grabbed him as they all went to the Sarutobi training grounds, leaving Sasuke and Sakura behind. Once there she placed Konohamaru down and allowed the tail to recede. Once again the trio stared in amazement. No matter how many times they saw Naruto allow one or more of her tails to come out then away, they never received answers for how she did it or where they came from. Instead each time they asked she would get them to do something. Right. I have about an hour and a half till I need to go and meet with sensei. I wasn't you to show me your storage seals and any flash tag seals you've made. Then trial them out with me here. She instructed as she took a seat on the round in front of them. Each of them went through their pouches she had forced them to wear. There had been an attempted kidnapping the previous year on the 3 of them in order to get to the Sandaime. Of course the attempt was thwarted as none of the kidnappers expected a Jinchuriki to be with them. The pouches contained a few kunai and ninja wire, but also explosion tags, flash seals and other seals to make for an easy escape. She had gone far enough to place a Hiraishin seal on each piece of their clothing and they made sure whenever they bought something new, they would bring it to her to place the seal on it. The 3 of their seals were very messily drawn but not bad for children their age. She then proceeded to see how each of their effectiveness was, and was delighted to see they all worked. Right. Well done on getting each of these seals to work. It takes time and effort to get Fuinjutsu to work and even then, not everyone can do it. They all waited patiently for the, however, to come. However, your handwriting needs to be improved on. It doesn't need to be anything fancy like mine or my old mom's, but it does need to be more eligible. If you get even the slightest thing wrong, the after effects can be lethal and even life-threatening. So that's what you're gonna work on before our next Fuinjutsu session. Of course I don't expect it to be perfect by then, at least just a little improved. She then gave each of them some blank scrolls and ink to start working on their handwriting. Happy none had complained about it. She remembered the first she had met Konohamaru. She was 8, a year after she had moved into her apartment as many people took to breaking in and damaging her things when she wasn't in. The old man had put an end to that, however, when he announced that she was the Yondaime's child. Majority of the people stopped hating her, but for those who feared her or had lost someone without being to move on, the announcement made no difference. It was then he had taken to arresting those people who tried to harm her. She had then moved into the Sarutobi estate and became the big sister to Konohamaru. She still used her apartment, just not for living in. She used it as a research lab, as Kurama calls in Den of Evil. He also had more colorful descriptions but hardly spoke them. Your little den reminds me an awful lot like Orochimaru. Did you compare me to the pedo hubby? Merely making a notice of who you tend to behave as. I thought I'd get compared to Jiraiya since I have a tendency to act like a pervert. But then again, I do drink a lot of alcohol, so I could be compared to Lady Tsunade. So you admit to committing the 3 shinobi taboos? I never denied them, fuzzball. Do not call the almighty Kyuubi no Kitsune, fuzzball. Or I will tear the flesh off your bones and eat it for tea. Sure, how would you get past my dad's infernal seal, as you call it? Details. None of them matter to me. Aha, keep telling yourself that, Kurama. Kankuro was getting on her nerves. For the last hour he had spoken non-stop about the blonde girl we had met earlier today, and it was driving Tamari crazy. It was a wonder Gaara hadn't snapped and attacked him yet. The youngest sibling was, after all, not known for his patience but for his murder record. She snuck a glance at the redhead and was surprised to see he wasn't in a very foul mood. He was in a foul mood, just not as bad as it had been a few hours ago. She wondered if he had killed someone whilst he was away from the 2 elder siblings, but told that thought to go away. There would be traces of the scent of blood on him, yet she could not smell any. Years of being with Gaara as he killed had made her and many others' sense of smell for a lot better. She wondered what was capable of getting Gaara distracted. That wasn't the word, but at the same time, there was no other word to describe the boy. I don't think even the sky or the waterfalls in Takigakure have a shade of blue as mystifying as hers. Said Kankuro for the 5th time within the hour. It was that specific time that Gaara had snapped out of whatever was distracting his and hit the back of Kankuro's head with a sand whip, causing the older boy to go flying and hit a wall. She cringed slightly and went to help, yet did not rebuke Gaara for doing so. Another 5 seconds and she'd have hit him with her fan. Naruto sighed as they entered the building of the first exam. She had just told Sasuke not 10 minutes ago to not cause any trouble, to make sure they went unseen. Did the Teme listen? No. Instead he goes and starts a fight with Rock Lee. Student of Might Guy, both had terrible fashion senses, yet were brilliant in taijutsu. And the Uchiha just had to go and choose to fight in taijutsu. Hey, Sasuke, since you're having a spar with this guy, you don't need me around, right? Go ahead, Haim, this shouldn't be long, he replied, not looking at her as he did so. Well, the Uchiha is correct, it won't take long. I estimate it will take them 4 minutes to reach a place to fight, 3 for details on the match and introductions, then 2 maybe 3 minutes for the Uchiha to have his ass handed to him. I should thank the ninja who is going to do that. You know, Kurama, you remind me of this old saying, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. First you compare me to an Uchiha, now to woman. I do not intend to forgive you for that, foolish ninja. I'm a Jinchuriki, not a ninja. And another thing. The day you forgive someone is the day I let you free for a whole week and tsunamis hit Konoha. Never. I ought to skewer you where you stand, yet I would like to see my vessel become a chunin or even jonin before I do. This way it will show the true essence of my power. Kurama ranted on for a while as he laughed sadistically. Deciding to ignore him, she sighed and gave Sakura a faint smile as she made her way upstairs to the real room of the exam, not surprised to see Kakashi-sensei there as well. Hey sensei, what are you Donnie, here? She asked when she wasn't too far from him. He sharply closed his book and pocketed it. Here to greet my adorable little genin as they go into a dangerous exam. Where are Sasuke and Sakura? Sasuke challenged Guy Sensei's student, Rock Lee, to a taijutsu spar and Sakura's cheering him on. She tattled. Any chance to get the son of a police officer, late or not, was a golden opportunity that one did not simply miss out on. Kakashi groaned behind his mask before he shook his head disapprovingly. Did you try to stop him? Is it at all humanly possible to get an Uchiha to not fight? If there is, I want to know. Now. She looked her sensei in the eye as he did her. After a few seconds they both smacked their foreheads. Well, you may as well go on inside. I'll stay here to greet the rest of the team. She nodded, and when she touched the door handle to enter, he called out to her, and Naruto. Show them what the Uzumaki Namikaze heiress can do. She didn't turn around, yet she knew she heard him. She gave a light smirk as she opened the door. As she did so, held back a groan. There was too many people in the room all at once with hostile and restless chakras. She blocked them all and decided to just reach out to any chakras that were familiar to her and was pleasantly surprised to feel Team 8 and 10 in the room with her. She decided she wouldn't go up to them just yet as she felt 3 other chakra signatures that were familiar. One in particular seemed to get her very happy. She looked up and made her way to the 3 unsuspecting siblings. She stopped halfway and decided to give them a fright and shunshined behind Tamari, hugging her from behind. The fellow blonde was about to attack whoever it was that thought they could jump on her before Naruto spoke. "Hey Tamari." Kankuro. Gaara. Although she was addressing all of them, she only looked at the teal eyes of Gaara no Subaku. Naruto Uzumaki. He gave a short glance around the room which caused a small smile to come onto her face. He seemed to realize he shouldn't tell people her last name. It was most likely because he wanted to kill her himself and not allow anyone else the satisfaction of killing her, but in Naruto's crazy mind, it made her happy he was so territorial of her. She heard Kurama groan at her logic yet chose to ignore him. She got off of Tamari's back, which due to her large fan was very uncomfortable. "Sorry about that guys. Didn't mean to scare ya." "You didn't," replied Kankuro as he allowed his gaze to drift down to Naruto's chest before his eyes found her own, only to see she was looking at Gaara's cold expression again. "Your chakra signatures said different. They all jumped slightly at my unexpected arrival." She allowed her gaze to drift to the other siblings, her eyes full of humor before looking back at Gaara. "How are you finding your stay in Konohagakure, Gaara? Compared to your siblings who came here years ago, it's your first time here, if I'm correct?" He hesitated before replying, "You are correct. As for my stay, it is fine." Nodding her head she internally smiled, yet his siblings seemed awfully shocked that their sibling had spoken at all. "I trust you've been sleeping well? I heard back in Suna you suffered from insomnia but that doesn't seem to be the case now." Truthfully, Naruto had made Shukaku stay mostly quiet whilst in Konoha if he ever wanted to be fed human blood again. She wanted to get close to Gaara for personal reasons and professional. The professional being, she was a Fuinjutsu master and wanted to fix the weak seal Gaara had on him. She would only be able to do that if she got close to him. "You are correct," he replied once again, and this time there was a glint of an emotion she couldn't decipher as it was gone as soon as it came. Expression going to stiff. The Teme could be proud and envious. There are many places here in Konoha that are hot tourist spots that are also frequented by locals. "Have you had a chance to see them?" The reply she received was his glare fading yet his expression to remain cold. It was then Naruto realized he probably thought she was acting like a child with a new toy. Play with it then throw it away. It was often how Jinchuriki were treated. Children would play with them but later toss them aside as if they were worthless. She had a similar upbringing till she turned 8 in which everyone would try to be friends with her due to her title. She made friends with those people as to not seem rude yet only stayed close to those who would play with her in her class. "Have you been to the forest not far from Out Hot Springs? There's a beautiful waterfall in the center. It used to be a place Lord Hashirama used to find his wife, Lady Mito, visiting often. He used his Mokuton and created the forest around the waterfall as an anniversary present to her. The agriculture varies from bonsai to cherry blossom trees, and since the Shodem used his jutsu, none of them ever wilt. I go there every so often with Konohamaru. It's an absolutely beautiful place." "No," he reluctantly replied. Smiling she continued, "We should go there sometime during your stay." "Are you asking Gaara out on a date?" asked the shell-shocked siblings, causing several glares to look their direction. None of them paid any heed to them, too used to the fiercer glare of one of their teammates. This time it was her turn to hesitate. "Well, yes and no. I would like to go on a date with your brother, but my offer reaches out to the two of you also. I just thought he might be a bit more relaxed if he wasn't around his siblings as he went about his day." She shrugged her shoulders before looking back into confused teal eyes. "So, what do you say?" His reply came without missing a beat, "No." Externally her smile remained the same yet internally she spirits wilted slightly. "Kurama, am I going about this wrong?" "I cannot say. Mito nor Kushina had to do this much to get their lovers to pay attention. Perhaps he doesn't think you're very much compared to him. You did try your very hardest to become last of your class, even if your classmates and teachers knew you were the brightest one amongst them." "Kurama, I'm shocked. I never would have thought you'd give me a compliment." "That was not a compliment to you, brat. It shows my brilliance when my host is more knowledgeable than those of their age. Well, you'll still be seeing a lot more of me during your stay here in Konoha, so maybe you'll change your mind. Go away, Uzumaki, or I will allow my mother to feast on your blood. Naruto's smile remained on her face, yet there was an edge to her tone as she replied, you and your mother can try, and fail. The two of you will end up joining the list of people who have tried to kill me. Today the count is 29. Temari and Kankuro's eyes grew wide at what she said. Not surprising really, it wasn't often you heard someone casually brush off a threat like that and say they have had people trying to kill them that many times. It is actually 31 times. Brad, you forgot those 2 times you were nearly killed at a baby. Ah yes, I forgot about those. She then felt the chakra signatures of her teammates and decided it was time to go to them. The Tami's pride seemed to be severely wounded. Well, it was nice talking to you guys, but my team finally got here, so it's best I go to them now. Good luck on your first exam. She waved to them as she made her way to the other 8 rookies that had gathered around a silver-haired male whose chakra felt very annoying. She made her way over to where her team and classmates were. They were all huddled around a silver-haired male with glasses. He also wore a high collar, which in Naruto's book meant he was either a jerk or a douche. Maybe both. The only people who weren't either of those things and wore high collars were Itachi and Shisui. She took a discreet sniff and noted he smelled an awful lot of snake, causing her to shiver in horror. The only other person who smelled like that was Enko Mitarashi, who scared the crap out of Naruto. She was a lot more wild than the queen of pranksters, yet that made her a good person to talk to every once in a while. Yo, did you guys start the reunion party without me? She asked as she jumped onto Kiba's back, a large grin on her face matching the one Kiba gave her. It's not much of a party without our queen prankster, now is it, Naru? He raised a hand to ruffle her hair, something he had taken to doing for years, but since he had been doing it for so long she simply cuffed him around the neck and ruffled his hair instead, causing his to yelp and Akamaru to bark. Kabuto over here offered to show us some of his ninfo cards, explained Hinata as she looked Naruto up and down, which caused her to hide behind Sasuke. She liked Hinata like a friend but really didn't like how those pupil-less eyes took in her form whenever they met. Naruto was by no means a homophobe like some people in the village, yet she didn't like to entertain the idea of being with any of her friends. The silver-haired guy, Kabuto, kneeled onto the ground and took out a deck of cards. Naruto got a bad feeling from him, and her bad feelings usually ended in a high note. Sasuke went forward with a pierced gaze, Gaara of the Sand, and Rock Lee of Konoha. Oh, you already know names. That makes it too easy. He placed a hand over the deck and swiped across them a moment later, taking 2 random cards with him. He left a dramatic pause, causing Kurama to roll his eyes. He seems to be a drama queen to an extent. Here they are. He held the 2 cards in front of his face. Please show me. Naruto blanched. Sasuke said please. First is Rock Lee. He's 1 year older than you guys. His mission experience, 20 D ranks and 11 C ranks. His squad leader is Guy. In just this 1 year his taijutsu has drastically improved, but his other skills have not improved at all. Last year, he'd attracted attention as Genin rookie with his ability, but didn't participate in the Chunin exam. This is his first time taking the exam, same as you guys. Tenten and Neji Hyuga are his teammates. Naruto's head turned to look at Hinata, confused as she looked sad. Hey Hinata? Isn't Neji your cousin? He was rookie of the year last year, right? She received a curt nod from the blue net. Next is Gaara no Subaku. His mission experience, 8 C ranks and 1 B rank. As a genin. Sadly, since he is a genin from a foreign nation, I have no further information of him. Foolish ninjin. My vessel has completed an S rank before she had been made a genin. Then she completed an A-ranked mission as well. Yes, Kurama, we get it. This isn't a competition of who has done the best missions. More so a test of what we have learned during out genin time. Yet I doubt Shukaku's Jinchuriki was given those high-level missions by accident like yours had been. Despite being the Jinchuriki to the almighty Kyuubi no Kitsune, the old fool still gives you reasonable missions. The case cage has no such problem, though, it would seem. Naruto had been too busy paying attention to Kurama, she hadn't seen the attack that reached Kabuto. It seemed the guy with a musical note on his headband had made a noise through his arm and broke his glasses. Something only she and perhaps Kiba and Shino would have noticed, with their sensitive hearing. although Shino's was mostly via his bugs. Kabuto then fell to the floor, and Sakura, being the kindred spirit she was, sometimes went to help him up with the help of Hinata. Yet Naruto's focus was solely on the music guys. Sound Ninja Silly Ninjin. They're from the Hidden Sound Village. Otogakure. Jinchuriki not Ninjin, she retorted by instinct. Before she could think anything further, a loud sound resonated across the room, as well as a large smokescreen, as a loud yet very familiar voice yelled, "Silence! Degenerates!" His voice echoed across the room as all eyes went onto the smoke that was slowly receding. And once it did, she could see the faces of Ibiki and several other Chunin, including the gate guards. "Sorry to keep you waiting. I am Ibiki Morino, proctor for the first test of the Chunin exam." He pointed to the heavily bandaged slouched male that had helped attack Kabuto. "You from the Hidden Sound Village? No doing as you please before the exam." She decided to tune the rest out as images suddenly flooded her mind, causing her to hold her head. A forest, a large snake, a tower, blood, yellow silted eyes, Sasuke covered in black seals, Sakura being held by her hair. She held back a gasp, barely. It was the first time she had received so many images at once. She usually only got perhaps 3, yet this time it had been 7. Something dangerous was going to happen. She doubted it was a mere coincidence that she would receive so many future images the same time. She felt a lump of dread settle in her stomach. There was also worry coating her heart, yet forced all her feelings down. She was a genin and shouldn't allow this sort of thing to get to her. But that didn't mean she couldn't act accordingly. She looked up only when she felt herself being tugged by Sakura and Sasuke. Both of them giving her annoyed glances, yet chose not to say anything. They were unaware of her powers, yet knew she had bad headaches for short periods of time. She nodded to the two of them and they made their way into the hall of the first round, being seated by numbers. She just so happened to be placed next to Hinata. Lovely. She listened to Ibiki play with their minds. She meant tell them the rules. She found it very odd that only 2 points would be deducted if you were caught cheating, but brushed that to the side. She wouldn't cheat. When she turned her test paper around, she was shell-shocked and did little to hide it. The questions were far too hard for the average genin to answer. Out of everyone here, she could guarantee that a maximum of 10 people could answer them. Shikamaru the lazy Teme would get it if he bothered. She herself believed she would only be able to get at least 7 of them correct. She believed Sakura and Hinata would be able to get some as well, but this was really ridiculous. She answered what she could and then said, "Kurama. You're an old and powerful entity who was held captive in 2 wives of cage. Do you know the answer to the rest of these by any chance?" He quirked a hidden brow. "Well, since you put it so nicely." "Wait, you're not going to argue with me on this one? I do believe having me sealed inside you should come with some benefits outside of our agreements. That in this exam is based solely on one's cheating abilities." "Wait, it is? You didn't notice? Everyone, including Shukaku's Jinchuriki, are cheating." She quickly wrote down the answers to the rest of the questions as Kurama had dictated and turned it around as she looked around the room to see how people were cheating. They were trying, but merely not being discreet enough. Ino had used her mind transfer jutsu, if the limp look she was supporting was an indicator. Sasuke and Neji were using their Dujutsu Kekkei Genkai, but so had Hinata. Lee seemed to be using mirrors with Ten-Ten, and Gaara was using a sand eye. Kiba was using Akamaru and Shino his bugs. Tamari seemed intelligent enough to not require cheating, or at least she was smart enough to not get caught. Kankoro, however, seemed to be using a puppet. It was astounding that no one had been disqualified, especially since hardly anyone in her year was being discreet. Just as she thought that a kunai flew by her and embedded itself into the desk behind her, the person was subsequently told to leave the room with his team as well. Apparently some people who cheated were just that obvious about it. At least the rookies were being creative about it. Near the end of the test, Kankoro asked to leave for the toilet and she noticed he was taking his puppet with him. Nothing suspicious about that whatsoever. She looked around and saw quite a few people had answered most if not all the questions, and towards the last few minutes Ibiki started to speak. It was then that Kankoro chose to appear. And the rest is canon. I've not changed it. Minus Naruto giving the inspirational speech, there is none of that here. Very few teams had managed to pass the first exam, and as she was about to release a sigh of relief, the window was broken open and a large banner opened across the room, being held by kunai embedded into the ceiling. Anko Mitarashi landed straight in front of the banner through the window. Naruto could practically hear Ibiko's groans of annoyance despite him not verbally doing so. Anko's outward sadistic behavior hadn't changed at all since she had last seen the woman, and neither had her outfit. She informed them, in a rather crude manner, that they were to go and meet them in a location where their Jonin-sensei would inform them of. Knowing Anko as well as she did, Naruto was willing to bet her apartment and all the research inside it that they were going to the Forest of Death. It would explain why she thought over half would fail. No doubt there would be a lot of death in the forest named after it. Kurama, you realize that is basically all you did after the old man's 6 paths passed away, right? What of it? Instead of replying, she ignored him and made her way to Training Ground 44, also known as the Forest of Death. Naruto had mixed feelings about this training ground. It was practical for survival exercises, hence why Kakashi-sensei had made them find him in the forest, yet at the same time, held so many dangerous and poisonous things such as plants and animals no one of a genin status would suspect. Minus her team, since they had previously been in there anyway. Once she arrived, she joined her team, and not long after the meeting point was full of different teams and she spied the 9 Konoha rookies as well as Team Guy. She also noticed the Sand siblings were also there, so she informed Sasuke she would be talking to them, not that he paid much attention. He was too busy glaring at Neji and Rock Lee. This time, instead of jumping onto Temari's back, she decided to jump onto Gaara's. The reaction was just as she thought. Sand from his gourd poured out and attempted to suffocate her, and it would have succeeded had it not been for her careful planning earlier to apply Kurama's shield around her neck. Your plan? Okay, fine. Your plan. So what, who cares? I do. Now go back to reality. Gaara, let go of her. Temari hissed at her brother, wide-eyed, clearly not wanting to get in trouble with Konoha for killing their Yondaime's only daughter. Deciding to mess with their heads a bit more, she channeled more chakra into her neck, causing Gaara's sand to disperse. She clicked her neck as she bent it left and then right, not once removing her eyes from Gaara's slightly widened ones. That's one heck of an ultimate defense you've got there, Gaara. Oh, and don't worry, Temari-senpai. We're all shinobi here. Gaara's reaction was simply a defense. Anyway, she clapped her hands together as a large smile made its way onto her face. First things first, Gaara. Have you reconsidered my offer from yesterday? His wide eyes returned to a glare as he looked at her, yet they weren't as fiery as they were the previous day. No. She decided not let his answer upset her and nodded, but she did pout. She looked over to Temari and said, I hope you've got enough supplies to last you a few days. Since Anko is our proctor, she's going to make us stay here in the Forest of Death for a few days at least. This place is literally her baby. Forest of Death? I thought this was Training Ground 44? Asked Konkoro as he looked at her in the eye. Temari, Gaara or their Jonin-sensei must have had a word with him that it was rude to stare at a girl's chest. Although in all fairness, Naruto wasn't doing very much to hide them since they were loosely wrapped in bandages and the zipper to her hoodie opened from just under her S. This is Training Ground 44. But to everyone here in Konoha it's known as the Forest of Death since it has venomous snakes, spiders, poisonous plants and lots of other dangerous crap. Perfect for survival training, right? She gave a smile and tilted her head to the side, causing a shiver to run up Konkuro's back. That's the sort of smile a yandere gives, just without the hands on the face. No one asked your opinion on my choice of smile, Kurama. Yo, Kurama, long time no see, big bro. There was a third voice in her head, and it seemed to be a tanuki? Shukaku, leave here at once. You'll cause my Jinchuriki unnecessary pain which I will have to heal. Naruto had not seen Kurama this angry since he had first woken up from his slumber, or the time Naruto had been in the presence of Shisui Uchiha's strange Sharingan. Like I care, bro. I want to know how I can be here. I refused to answer. Now leave. Kurama roared and forced Shukaku to leave. Kurama wasn't exaggerating when he said Naruto would be in a lot of pain. She walked back a few steps as she clutched her head with both hands, balling them up into her hair. Very few black dots clouded her vision, so closed her eyes, willing the pain to go away, and after 10 or so seconds it did. Uzumaki blood, plus having the 9 tails makes you the fastest person to heal on the planet. She opened her eyes to see all three Sand siblings wide-eyed, Gaara's hands raised in defense. Her eyes were still squinted as she let one hand fall to her side, the remaining one clutching her head and massaging it at the same time. I see why you don't get much sleep, Gaara. Shukaku is a pain in the ass. If at all possible, all three of their eyes widened as they all took a step back, causing Naruto to mentally pat herself on the back for being able to do so without even trying. How do you? Temari asked, pointing to Gaara and the younger blonde as her head looked between the two of them. I'm an Uzumaki. We have great sensory abilities. Gaara has 2 chakra signatures, his own and Shukaku's. Here's how I knew it was Shukaku. The 2 tails is in Kumo, 3 tails is the Mizukage, 4 tails is in Iwa. The 5 tails is also in Iwa. 6 tails is in Kiri, 7 tails is in Taki, 8 tails is in Kumo, and the 9 tails is in Konoha. Also the 1 tails is in Suna and always has been due to his sand affinity. Did I miss anything? She looked at the 3 Sand siblings, her yandere smile back on her face as she placed her head in her hand, which ultimately led to her chest to bounce, which drew the attention of both boys. At this, both Temari and Naruto raised a brow, shocked Gaara would even look. Naruto's seduction classes were paying off. She beamed, causing Temari to blush. It was then that Naruto felt Anko's chakra and mentioned it to the 3 of them, going over to her teammates as they gathered together. At some point a kunai cut her cheek and Anko decided to be creepy and licked it off. Her reason for doing both was because she wasn't paying attention to the Tokubetsu Jonin. Kurama, however, started to growl and lash around her mindscape when another sound ninja came and handed Anko her kunai via her tongue. She was unable to make out what he was saying through the growl and gnarls but managed to make out snake, pedophile, Sharingan, Orochimaru, experiments, snakes again, Senin, and other similar words. Naruto froze at the implications, and as they made their way into the tents, she made a clone to warn Anko and the other proctors of what was going on, as well as the teams she knew. They made it to the gate when Naruto told her teammates about Orochimaru being here at the exam, and at first the 2 of them were very skeptical, but after some convincing they believed her, and the 3 of them cautiously and quickly made their way through the forest. As she thought of the forest, she realized one very important detail about the tower. It hadn't fallen during the 9 Tails attack during her birth, meaning the Hiraishin seal inside the tower should still be there. She informed her team she would try to get access to the seal that was there. She had after all been there, so it should make things a little easier. After a few minutes she found herself in the Jonin room where everyone was watching the exam. All eyes went onto her, causing her to turn red, hastily apologize and return to her team. When she returned, the team was happy that they could quickly make their way to the tower and took a short lunch break, Naruto insisting on having a barrier seal placed. She had only recently learned as she sent out over a dozen clones to scout out the other teams and get a scroll if necessary. Their lunch break lasted just under a half hour, in which time nearly half of Naruto's clones had been dispersed and the other half still doing as she requested. They carried on through the forest when Naruto was suddenly face to face with a tree-sized snake. Doing what any other debatably sane kunoichi would do, she threw a kunai with 6 explosive tags into its mouth as it tried to eat her, causing it to explode moments later, filling her and her teammates with snake essence. She muttering curses under her breath, swearing vengeance. It was enough to cause both Sasuke and Naruto to stand a good distance ahead of her, since if they were behind her, they would be accused of going too slow. They carried on making their way through the forest, yet it wasn't long after that they were intercepted by Kiba and his team. Or at least people pretending to be Kiba and his team. They smelled absolutely off and like snakes. Hey guys, we just saw this god-awful redhead kill a bunch of people with sand. Sand. Naruto had to give it to them. They had Kiba's personality almost on point, yet it wasn't perfect. Do you guys want to tell these auto idiots why they're hanged awful, or should I? Sasuke and Sakura leaned against a tree on either side of the blonde, smirking as they gestured for her to do the honors. Well, first of all, Kiba hardly ever has his hood down. Almost always has his dog Akamaru either in his hoodie or his head, yet you don't have Akamaru. He's an Inuzuka, he would rather die than be away from his ninkin. Hinata doesn't act shy with people she knows, she acts very, very forward. Too forward in fact. Shino, you got him right at least. Another thing you forgot to do was change your scents. You smell of snakes. That should be it. I'll let my team do what they want with you now. Doing what they wanted required her to use her ki to freeze them as Sakura broke all the bones from their fingertips to their shoulders. Once she had done that, Sasuke proceeded to use his ninja wire and tied them up high on some trees at a good distance from each other. Kurama was praising their creativity. She would have thought it was overdone if her favorite shirt hadn't currently been covered in snake essence and if she didn't stink. Also, the humiliation she was feeling due to Kurama's comments right now were most definitely not helping her mood. They made their way through the forest on edge, waiting for the inevitable attack that would occur. However, as they passed the river, a clone Harai shined in front of them with the second scroll. That left them with a heaven scroll and an earth scroll. The team stopped and waited for Naruto as she dispersed all of her clones. When they had stopped at the river earlier, she had made extra clones to create traps and such in order to lessen the amount of competitors in the next round. She had to be careful not to allow those clones to disperse yet. Once she was sure she dispersed all of the ones she needed to do, they all Harai shined to the tower where all the Jonin were. Her face became red as she saw all the Jonin instructors looking at them, before she grabbed a hold of her teammates, mumbled an apology and dragged them out of the room. They bumped into Kakashi-sensei on the way and he had said they needed to enter a room before he poofed away. They made their way into the room and saw a riddle in front of them. Deciding to simply let Sakura figure out what the answer was, she started to strip herself of her hoodie when she heard a familiar voice. Turning around, she saw Iruka-sensei talking to them and decided to blank out what he was saying. Sasuke seemed to be doing a similar thing but was at least partially paying attention. She did however notice he said they could go to their room. Singular. They would be sharing a room together. They shrugged their shoulders as they made their way upstairs. Sakura going to the kunoichi showers downstairs where Sasuke went to the shinobi ones. Naruto went to the ensuite bathroom in their room. She changed into a set of clothing she had sealed and earlier gave Sasuke and Sakura scrolls that had their belongings in as well. Her new outfit was different to her usual. A black spaghetti strap bodice top with an orange zip-up shawl-like top which uncovered her left shoulder and went to her upper thigh. She also wore thigh-high shinobi heels with her holster in place. On the back was of course the Uzumaki swirl, and her right hand and arm were covered with standard gloves that had a fishnet going up to her upper arms. Just as she finished getting dressed, Sakura returned and gave a wolf whistle at her appearance. Well, if Konoha doesn't get many treaties from the other nations by simply looking at you, I don't know what will. She laughed at the girl's comment and noticed her hair. Before you bore me with your nonsense girl talk, I will be going to sleep. Don't wake me up unless you're dying. Sakura, why do you keep your hair long? You're a hand-to-hand combatant. Wouldn't it be easier to have it either cut or tied? She asked as she braided her hair with the help of a clone. Sasuke prefers girls with long hair. That and I can do a lot of things with my hair with it long. She shrugged her shoulders as she watching Naruto do her own hair with a clone. Naruto jutted out her lips. It made sense. Sakura did put her hair in different styles each time she saw her and each one looked good and convenient. I also noticed your infatuation with the Teme seems to have lessened since we came back from Wave Country. How comes? She asked as her clone finished her hair and dispersed itself. Well, I noticed a lot more things about him and realized we have nothing in common besides our careers. That I realized that Sasuke would have to take part in the CRA and I'm not sure how I would feel knowing the man I was in love with had kids with other women. And it would be selfish for me to say he can't take part in it. Naruto was so happy that Sakura had matured she had to hold back her tears. Well, you made a good choice. You wouldn't want to be stuck with a guy with Sasuke's deadbeat personality. That and he says, way too much. He's also antisocial. You have no room to talk. I happened to see the redhead you've been stalking recently and he no personality, so to speak. Unless you call being a psychopath having a personality. She yelled with a large smile on her face. Said smile grew larger when Naruto took the bait. Gaara's here? Since when? Since 97 minutes after the exam started. Replied Sakura as she checked her nails, teasing the blonde. Just as Naruto was about to speak up, her stomach growled and not a moment later a half-wet shirtless Sasuke Uchiha entered the room. Naruto barely gave him a glance as she declared them to be going for dinner. Shrugging, Sasuke put on a shirt and Team 7 made their way downstairs together. Sasuke looked for onigiri and tomatoes. Naruto looked for ramen and Sakura, who had long since abandoned her diet, looked for chicken. As they were serving themselves, Naruto felt a poke at her mind and her back heated. She could sense several people in the room, but she couldn't sense who was looking at her. Sasuke. I want you to discreetly look around the room and tell me who's looking at me. I feel a glare burning into my very soul. Overly exaggerated, yet she didn't care. He looked around, but it was Sakura who answered, the Kasage's son. He looks pissed off. What did you do to offend him so badly? Naruto looked baffled. Hands splayed out in front of her as she replied, all I did was ask him out. So I failed to see what I did wrong. What did he say? Asked Sasuke, clearly wanting to be let in on this part of the gossip. Something Sakura and Naruto learned when they became a team was Sasuke liked to know gossip, but didn't like to spread it outside the two girls. Apparently it was something Itachi encouraged, so he would know anything and everything about people. He had also been told that not everything he heard would be true and to simply listen but not act. One word, no. Both her teammates raised their brows and pointed to her chest. Did he even look at your chest? Asked Sakura, confused as to how Naruto was rejected. He did. Still didn't change his mind. Naruto and Sakura confusedly followed Sasuke as he led the two of them to the table the Sand siblings were sitting at. Sakura, when you feel like the two of us are going overboard, hit us or yell. Naruto and Sakura looked confusedly at each other as they took seats across the three siblings. Temari, Kankuro and Gaara no Subaku, started Sasuke as he took his brooding pose. How did you find the second round? He asked, causing Naruto and Sakura to look very concerningly his way. He was never one to strike a conversation. Did he fancy one of them? Naruto Uzumaki. Leave. This caused all eyes to go to Gaara, then Naruto. Her teammates' eyes were laughing at her, but the Sand siblings were concerned and worried. The test was actually quite easy. We managed to finish it quite quick. By the way, I do love your new outfit, replied Kankuro as he leered to her chest. She didn't have anything binding her chest, so the bodice was the only thing covering it, giving him a good view. Not that Naruto really cared who looked, they wouldn't get to touch was all that mattered to her. Maybe when she was older she would care, but at the current time, she didn't. None of the three siblings replied, Gaara glaring at Naruto, who focused her attention of Temari when she realized what the Teme was doing. Temari, you're a wind user, right? The older blonde looked at her, confused by her question but carried on the conversation nonetheless. Yes. Why did you want to know? In fact, I'd love to know how you figured it out. I have a wind affinity and was wondering if you had any tips? I can do all D rank and some C rank wind release jutsus, but was wondering how to move an incoming object without being near it. As for how I figured it out, you're from the land of wind and carry a large tesson. Unless you get hot really easy and need to cover large surface area to cool down, I fail to see why you should carry one. Temari, Kankuro and Sasuke chuckled lightly at her joke. There is a technique taught in Sanagakure to high-tier wind users. You simply use a bit of your chakra to either create or control the air around you and make it speed up. Of course, you could always do the Daitapa or Yadama Henshin Baka. The former being used for large things such as people or boulders, whereas the latter is used for things such as shuriken and kunai. Now I've heard of the second one, that's AC rank, but the first one I can actually do. I just find it annoying how you have to build it up before you release the wind. Temari nodded her head earnestly, clearly having faced the same problem before. I would teach you the technique I use to deflect weapons without having to do that, but it's a Suna secret. Naruto waved a hand as she peeked at the others. Sasuke and Sakura were talking to Kankuro as Gaara glared at her. It's fine, I get it. It's like if I wanted to teach you a clan technique, I would have to go through a lot of paperwork first. Sasuke and I are the only ones of our year to actually have a specialization in an element. Everyone else has something else they specialize in. Like Sakura, she specialized in Genjutsu and Inryo Ninjutsu. Temari looked to her teammates, clearly impressed that fresh out of the academy Genin had already started to specialize. Can you take a guess at what my siblings and I specialize in? Then I'll try to guess what the people I've seen specialize in. Nodding her head slowly, she looked to each sibling as she answered, well, since you're the eldest you have to specialize in diplomacy and stuff like that, as well as wind. Kankuro has to specialize in puppets since he's carrying one around with him everywhere, and as for his element I'd have to say wind, but I think he'd be good with the other elements as well, minus fire. That doesn't go with puppets. Gaara on the other hand, Well, he carries a gourd of sand, so I'd say sand manipulation. As for elements, wind, earth and lightning seem to fit his personality. She was interrupted by Sakura scoffing. What personality? I said it before, I'll say it again. The only way this boy could have a personality is if being a psychopath was one. Before Naruto or Sasuke could reprimand the girl, the latter was called in by a Jonin to talk to Kakashi, so Naruto decided to carry on. That's honestly all I can think of. Well, no, I guess assassination would work well with Gaara since he did easily kill Team Shigur in the Forest of Death. About that, you made the forest seem really dangerous, it wasn't all that bad, said Kankuro as he looked her in the eye, clearly trying to avoid the topic of his brother. Oh, I guarantee that at least 1/3 of the teams that participated either die or get severely injured. She let out a giggle, causing Sakura to lightly hit her over the head. You're going a bit psycho there, Naruto. She smiled sheepishly just as a sandtail hit the table, causing the food on their trays to shake. Good. If they had fallen, Naruto would have gone crazy for the loss of ramen. Naruto Uzumaki, I suggest you leave the table at once. Your presence irks me. If Naruto, though he looked irritated before, Gaara looked downright mutinous right now. Naruto, being the weird person she was, wasn't frightened by it at all, instead she loved it. Sakura on the other hand seemed to be barely holding it in. Why would my presence irk you if I'm talking to your sister? Would you prefer I talk to you instead, because I will have to finish my conversation with your sister first? By all means, please carry on talking to my brother, said Temari. The same time Sakura said, Naruto, where do you come up with these conclusions? Leave before I feed your blood to mother. Naruto groaned as she looked to the redhead. I told you once and I'll tell you again. I'm not afraid of your mother. You can both come at me with all you've got, you won't get very far. Because she was sidetracked, looking Gaara in his hypnotic teal-colored eyes she didn't notice the 2 whips of sand that took a hold of her, causing her to involuntarily flinch. One wrapped around her waist whilst the other went around her neck, the latter not being too tight, leaving enough space for her to breathe. She could vaguely sense the Jonin and Anbu in the room moved to them, yet she raised her hand and used Konoha's signs for them to go back to their posts. Why do you not fear me? I have never met a person who didn't cower in my presence. Even my father once did so why don't you? The sand wrapped around her suddenly tightened, causing Kurama to wake up. What did you do to upset Shukaku's Jinchuriki so much, foolish ninja? He asked sleepily. Why must I always be at fault? Can't people just get annoyed and I just happen to be there? No, well, I didn't do anything. She stuck her mental tongue at him like the childish girl she was. She let out a large bout of chakra, dispersing the sand from around her as she sucked in 2 large breaths. She looked to Gaara and saw his fury, saw the large range of his emotions swirling in those hypnotic teal eyes, and in that moment Naruto saw the real him. Up until now all she had seen was a facade, yet here and now was real. She knew she should be afraid, like Sakura or Kankuro, yet she wasn't. Hell, even Temari seemed to be scared, and she had been the one to keep her cool till now. Once again it simply excited her. At this point, she was thriving off it. Sakura would most definitely demand she have her head scanned to see if she had been dropped as a child or if all her screws were where they should be, since this was clearly not how someone reacted to being threatened. Then again she recalled Jiraiya of the Sannin being highly infatuated with Lady Tsunade despite her constantly beating the crap out of him. Probably not the best type of relationship someone could get into, but she was sure this was simply a phase. I do not condone violent relationships, but anime likes tsundere, and I'd like to think of Gaara as a half tsundere half yandere. Sakura was then called in like Sasuke, yet she paused, only leaving when Naruto gave her the okay. Once she was out of hearing range she spoke. Did you honestly believe your demon frightens me, Gaara? There are worse demons out there and I've met them. The only difference between us is I know how to control them. Neither Gaara nor Kankuro seemed to understand her implication, but Temari did. She gave a look that told Temari not to tell her bothers, to let them figure it out themselves before she was also called out to take part in whatever her teammates had been individually called in for. It turned out that Team 7 had been called in because Orochimaru had seen sighted but somehow escaped. They thanked Naruto for informing them and allowed the 3 of them to go after writing a summary of what had happened before, during and after the exam. Naruto of course omitted the details regarding the Sand siblings. Knowing the old man, he would go through his version of Ed all over again, which was something someone who specialized in seduction really didn't need to be told twice about. Begrudgingly, the three of them went back to their rooms, a rule that had been placed on them. They had been given a curfew that couldn't be broken, the exception being Naruto, but without her teammates there was little she could actually do. The three of them joined the beds together to make more room for them to sleep easily. Naruto in the middle, Sakura by the door and Sasuke by the window. They had spent a good chunk of the night discussing who they believed would make it to the tower. So far the only ones they could be sure of was the Konoha teams. The other teams all seemed strong, but outward appearances could be deceiving. It was practically a rule for Shinobi and Kunoichi. Kabuto and his team could make it, said Sasuke as they moved on to the older generations. He has taken the exam lots of times and has a lot of information on everyone. Not likely. He's working for Orochimaru. Both of her teammates looked to her to continue. When we met him the other day he had a distinct smell of snake. Then when we met Orochimaru in that girl's body, it was the same smell. He's probably at T&I right now. T&I? Asked Sakura, causing Sasuke and herself to look at her before they realized Sakura had no business knowing about them before, as she wasn't a member of a clan. Torture and interrogation. A unit in the information corps that does as the name suggests. I say it's part of the unit, but Ibiki is actually in charge, even though Inoichi has been running the corps longer than Ibiki ran T&I. The three teens were interrupted by a knocking at the door, stating they should go to sleep if they wanted to be rested for the training their sensei was going to put them through the next day. So the next morning the three of them got up, Naruto first, who then woke up Sakura, who was less of a morning person than Naruto, but more so than Sasuke. Getting the Teme up was the hardest part, as he kept trying to light them on fire. At some point he gave up, so he and Sakura made their way back downstairs to take a shower. Why the three of them couldn't take turns using the ensuite was beyond her. Naruto was training in seduction and should not have had the reaction she did when the sand boys entered her room as she was getting dressed. She only had on her underwear and her bodice, which was halfway down her chest when they came in. Her face became red as she hurriedly put it further down, pointing a finger to the two of them. Once she did so, "Didn't anyone teach either of you to knock before you enter? I could have been completely naked for all you knew." Not that the thought did much to deter them. Kankuro and Gaara both seemed to be unfazed by the sight of a half-naked Naruto, so she threw a pillow at Kankuro but didn't manage to get the other to hit Gaara. Ultimate defense and all. Not a moment later Temari came behind them. "I am so sorry, Lady Uzumaki." She smacked both boys over the head. "Apologize." Kankuro bowed his head as he apologized to her. However, Gaara seemed adamant on not apologizing, yet Temari was having none of it. You can't just barge in a lady's room whilst she's half naked and not apologize to her. Especially when said lady is the daughter of the Yondaime Hokage. She placed her hands on hips as she yelled at her brother, clearly having no fear whilst doing so. That, or she felt the need to take on a motherly role for the boy who had never met their mother. Gaara eventually replied in a monotone voice, "I apologize for walking in on you whilst you were getting dressed." Blushing further, Naruto refused to allow it to get to her. "Well, you came here for a reason. What is it?" "Our sensei, Baki, insisted we insist on all agreeing to your proposal of showing us the forest you wanted to take Gaara to," started Temari. "I was going to insist on leaving my siblings behind and simply let the two of us go," continued Kankuro, yet was interrupted by the youngest sibling. "I followed after to stop both of them for even suggesting the idea." His monotone voice matched the blank look in his eyes. "Focus on the conversation and not the eyes that seem to fascinate you so much." "Shut up." Shukaku decided to enter her mind again as a sudden boisterous voice yelled, "Kurama. Seriously bro, I want to know how this works." Naruto gasped as she fell to knees, hands clutching her head as she clenched her eyes shut. "Shukaku, how many times do I have to tell you? Leave, tell me first. I am older and you will respect me. Don't try that. You've been pulling that card since the old man died." Both Biju clearly forgot the pain they were putting Naruto through as she rolled onto her back, writhing on the ground as black dots surrounded her vision. "At least I'm not driving a ninja to insanity." Kurama seemed to finally realize what was going on with Naruto as he answered his brother's question. "She is Ashura's reincarnation, and since she and I have fully merged together, as well as her having a fragment of Hagoromo's power, all the tailed beasts can enter her mind. However, since she is still young, it can cause her lots of pain, so I suggest you leave. So you're saying she has the old man's son's soul inside her? Shukaku was suddenly ripped out of her mind as a hand was placed on her forehead. The hand didn't move, even after she opened her squinted eyes. It belonged to Gaara, and was very warm. He seemed to run on the same body heat as Naruto did, so she assumed it was a Jinchuriki thing. She stopped gasping but did swallow large bouts of breaths, following the breathing pattern Tamari instructed she follow. Kankuro was getting her a glass of water, from where she wasn't sure and didn't quite care. However, when she tried to reach for it, her hands shook. It was this vase sight that her teammates walked in on. A half-naked honorable daughter in pain as she was surrounded by ninja from a foreign nation, the Cage's children to boot. To make matters worse, the crazy one who enjoyed killing people was touching her. Not suspicious whatsoever, Sasuke activated his Sharingan as he went to attack. Not a wise idea, attacking the children on the cage, but it wasn't something they couldn't dodge. He threw a few shuriken and kunai at Tamari, who used a gust of wind to deflect it, and instead came hers and Gaara's way. She was too weak at the current time to deflect them. However, it wasn't necessary. Gaara deflected them with his sand. It was then Naruto noticed something odd about Sasuke's chakra and his form. There were black ink marks running up his neck and left arm. Having finally caught her breath, she spoke up, after noticing a couple of Konoha-jonin and Enbu coming inside. "I'm fine." She sat up slowly, wincing at the sudden pressure in her head. "There was a lot of talking going on in my head is all." All eyes went from her to Gaara. It was common knowledge for the guards that Gaara was a Jinchuriki, and they also knew the Nine Tails couldn't cause harm upon her, meaning the One Tails had to have done something. Hayate, Genma and Kakashi-sensei all took a hold of Sasuke as they forced him to the opposite side of the room. She would have to talk to them all later about the marks on Sasuke. "Gaara no Subaku, we kindly ask you to remove your hand from Lady Uzumaki," said Rado as he came forward, eyes watching Gaara's hand, which had yet to leave her as it now rested on the side of her neck. Gaara glared at them and didn't remove his hand till another 7 seconds. Naruto had been mentally counting. "Thank you. Now, may I ask what went on here? I don't wish to accuse anyone, but the sight we were all greeted with upon arrival wasn't the best to prove innocence." Gaara stood up and his siblings stood on either side of him as Sakura and Asuma stood beside her. The room was getting far too crowded, and if anyone else came in, she would yell at them. "We apologize for that. My siblings and I came to tell Lady Uzumaki that we wanted to take her up on her offer to escort us in the forest behind your hot spring when we interrupted her getting dressed." After apologizing and informing her of our unexpected arrival, she fell down clutching her head in pain. She went on the ground completely a moment later when my brother realized what the problem was and thought to help alleviate her pain. "That was when the rest of her team arrived," replied Tamari. Her reply was very diplomatic, which was nothing less than what Naruto expected from the daughter of the Cage. Naruto was bored out of her mind as she sat in front of the Hokage with Gaara, Tamari and Sakura. Sasuke was downstairs getting the cursed hiki he had gotten from Orochimaru under control. She planned on checking it out and seeing if she could defuse the seal. If she could examine the seal long enough and understands what makes it tick, she can either remove it completely or at least place it in Sasuke's full control. She also had to make a seal to get Shukaku to shut up. As things are currently, she made a separate mindscape for the two Biju to do as they pleased. However, it left her with a headache as they did so. Whatever Gaara had done earlier is what really caught her attention. It was as if he had sucked Shukaku from her and back into himself. If she could understand that, she might be able to get better control of having the Biju talk to her. So, all in all, everything pans down to Naruto wanting to take you all to the hot springs forest, and that was when things went south due to Shukaku, but Gaara over here fixed that all up, correct? The way he said it made Naruto think whether or not the old man had either smoked too much or perhaps had too much sake. I am more inclined to believe he had something bad to smoke. Or perhaps everything just became an overload for him. "What up, Kurama? How's it going?" "I am fine despite being locked inside you for the next few days. Is there no way for you to release me for the day?" "I can try. Once this meeting's over, I'll ask if I can be excused for a short while and release you. I'll come back at dinner time to collect you, or do you think you can make it back to the tower by yourself?" "I am more than capable of making it back, and if I don't, you can always force me back. There is always that option." So, when do you think we'll get a chance to do some fighting? She tuned back into reality, deciding having done what she needed to do, and only paid attention when the Sanddame said it was okay for them to leave. He also stated it was okay for everyone to leave the tower if they so pleased, just as long as they were back by the evening of the fourth day. If they weren't back in time for the matchups to be decided, then they would be disqualified. She walked beside Tamari as they made their way through the corridor back to their rooms, Gaara standing on Temari's other side. So, did you guys have a specific time you wanted to go to the forest? We can go any one of these days, or we could go once this round has finished. Tamari grinned as she repeated, well, I think it'd be better to go after this round. If that's alright with you? That's great, Datbeo. Also, I was wondering, Gaara. The redhead only gave her a glance in the corner of her eye, but that was all she needed to know. He was listening at the very least. She moved to stand in the middle where Tamari previously was, her arms behind her back as she spoke. First, I wanted to say thank you for whatever you did to get Shukaku out of my head. Bastard is currently killing my head, but I've managed to shove him in this corner. The second thing I wanted to say was if I could have a look at your Jinchuriki seal and see if there's anything I can do to give you better control. If not, then could I have like a picture of it so I can work on it? Gaara's and Temari's footsteps faltered slightly, clearly not thinking that would be the next conversation the blonde brought up. How do you know of those seals? She gave him a flat look, clearly not understanding why he would ask her such a question, but answered nonetheless. My father was the Yondaime Hokage who was known for his Hiraishin. Fair enough, it belonged to the Naidame, but he was known for using it a lot more. My mother was an Uzumaki who taught him about seals. Knowing that, it made me very curious about seals, and Uzushiogakure was the nation that sealed the tailed beasts away in the first place. Gaara? Asked Tamari tentatively. How about you let her have a look at it and then we can take a picture and let her study it further? It would be highly beneficial if you could control him. At the very least, you should be able to sleep a lot better. Said Tamari before she furrowed her brows and looked to the blonde. You didn't by any chance do something to help Gaara sleep, have you? Naruto gave a nervous laugh and scratched the back of her head. Yeah, I placed this small seal on him by a bird. I placed a seal that would move onto the largest chakra source when it landed. Gaara, thankfully, was who it landed on. It's mostly a suppressant, so you can't hear his gender-bent murmuring. Gaara blinked and Naruto saw he was debating on whether or not he should thank her or kill her, yet he was saved from having to decide on which one to do. On behalf of my socially constipated brother. Thank you for helping him, I know he won't do it himself. Is there anything we can do to repay you for your kindness? Speak to your brother about my perks and what the benefits would be from dating me. Her eyes twinkled as she gave the taller blonde a wink. Tamari grinned as she threw her arm around the Uzumaki. You and I are going to be great friends. I will most definitely do that. Do I get to mention this? She gently poked at her stomach, making sure Gaara didn't notice. She gave it a thought before shaking her head, whispering to her, no. I'd prefer he either figure it out himself or I tell him. No one in Konoha speaks of it whilst foreigners are here for fear of something I don't care much to remember. She peeked behind to have a look at Gaara, who was walking a good distance from them. How do you have control over the 9 tails? She looked back at Tamari as she replied, well, that's a long story, but to shorten it, let's say I merged my chakra with the 9 tails chakra, and that's how we got where we are today. You know, despite that seal you placed on him, he isn't too keen on sleeping. He enjoys sitting on rooftops in the evening, if you catch my drift. She gave Naruto a wink as an extra clue, causing a large grin to find its way on her face. Naruto nodded, contemplating the different things she could have meant. You never did get round to guessing what I specialized in, by the way. Tamari jerked, as if just realizing it as she scrutinized the young blonde. Well, you're the ward of the Sanddame Hokage and daughter of the Yondaime Hokage, so I'd have to say diplomacy. She said it with such finality and certainty that Naruto was unable to hold back her laugh. Whilst she was being trained on diplomacy and other lessons a Kage specializes in, that was not what she specialized in. It took her a minute to calm down, and when she did, Gaara was leaning against the wall as he stared off into midair. Actually, I specialize in seduction. Though I am being trained in. Wait, what? Yelled a wide-eyed Tamari. That seemed to be the most emotion she had ever seen from such a stoic person. Then again, she was used to ruffling people's feathers, it shouldn't be surprising anymore. She could feel Gaara's gaze on her, yet she chose not to look at him yet as she spoke to Tamari. Well, it made sense to me. Not many women choose that field of work, yet it's something that can come in handy with my diplomacy. My team is a unit or a frontline attack team, so I won't be used for infiltration unless it's highly necessary. I have great sensory abilities to do that, however there's another girl in class who would do better for that. She thought of Hinata or Ino. Both had great figures and personalities that were good for infiltration. Ino was best as she would work in the informations unit. Using her womanly wiles could get people to respond better. She finally looked at Gaara, and somehow he managed something she never thought was humanly possible. His eyes looked cold, yet they were burning with something. It made his teal eyes hard, yet they also sparkled. With eyes like those, that look should be illegal, as if caused her heart to skip a beat. Temari was pacing 2 steps as she looked and pointed between Naruto and the end of the corridor where they had met the Sandame, stuttering out, but you is the Hokage seduction diplomacy. Gaara seemed to disapprove as he glared at his sister. That is enough, Temari. You are making a scene worse than when Kankuro started to flirt with her. You make it seem like I don't get flirted at almost every day anyway. She shrugged her shoulders as they finally reached the end of the corridor. When would you like me to look at it, Gaara? She asked when they were in Kankuro's hearing. Gaara glared at her as he thought of a time. Tonight. Kankuro and Baki coughed their drinks, clearly finding the conversation unusual. Kankuro, Baki Senesi, you will never guess what Naruto here specializes in, spoke Temari as she grinned at them, arm around Naruto's shoulder. Baki studied Naruto before he replied, as the honorable daughter of the Yondaime I would have to say diplomacy. He gave a bow to Naruto, acknowledging Naruto as practical royalty, and in return she bowed her head. That's what we all thought. But no, she specializes in seduction. Seduction. Temari's voice showed her confusion and other emotions Naruto hadn't experienced in order to explain, but it was between annoyance, shock and confusion. Kankuro let out a strangled spluttering noise as his face turned a nice shade of pink. Baki on the other hand seemed to not allow this information to shock him, however his eyes widened, but then a small frown marred his face as he glanced at where Gaara was standing. How very odd. I did not take Lord Sarutobi one to allow his ward into such a dangerous line of work, spoke Baki, the dutiful politician he was. He refrained from insulting both her and the Hokage despite the fact he was thinking it, yet he managed to get his thoughts across. She gave him a smile. Well, in all honesty, it was my choice. Due to who my parents are, I have several areas I need to perfect. Fuinjutsu, as both my parents specialized in it. Diplomacy, since my father was a Hokage. Chakra control and sage arts due to both of them. But due to my Uzumaki blood, my chakra is a lot more dense and corrosive, so I have to specialize in chakra control mostly because of that. Also due to my reserves, my team and I have been made the frontliners of my graduating class. Infiltration was something that I want to add since I want to work in seduction and it'd help in that area. Her smile never left her face as she explained about the several different areas she had to learn in order to take the Hokage seat. Of course she never stated she would take it, merely hinted at it. By right of birth, like Tsunade, she was next in line for the title of Kage, but the same could be said about Asuma Sarutobi. However, if we went by experience, Kakashi-sensei would be on that list as well if he didn't prefer being 3 hours late and read hentai all day. To add to that list, Lady Tsunade could also take the title if she ever wanted it, or to ever return to Konoha. That is quite the achievement, Lady Namikaze. She waved a hand. Please. No need for that, especially with that name. If you won't call me by my first name, then I request I be addressed by my Uzumaki name, since I'm less likely to get killed because of it. Iwa, Kumo and Kiri Ninja are here after all. She gave him a pointed look and he gave a curt nod, and he gave one in return with a bow before looking pointedly at Gaara and left. She clapped her hands, causing a loud echo in the empty room. Well then. When did you all want to go to the forest? It will be a lot less dangerous than this one, I promise. Kankuro and Temari looked at each other before looking back at Gaara. Temari, being the brave and devoted sister she was, went over to Gaara and whispered something that was clearly meant to be private, so Naruto tried not to listen. Whatever she said made him clench his jaw as he looked Naruto in the eye, and once again a shiver of thrill went through her back, causing her to grin. We will go with you a day after this round has finished," he replied before marching out of the room, slamming the door behind him as he did so. causing Kankuro to jump slightly. He didn't seem to be a coward, however whenever it came to his little brother he seemed on edge. It made her think about Gaara's life growing up and what it was about his childhood that caused such a reaction from all those around him. His siblings left after him, leaving her on her own before she remembered Sakura had gone to the infirmary where Sasuke was being looked after and decided to go join her and see if there was anything she could do to help. She chose against knocking and barged right into the room, making sure not to create any loud noises in case he was sleeping. Which was a complete waste of time and effort because as soon as she entered she saw a very flustered Sakura who looked thoroughly accosted and a highly irritated Sasuke. Raising a brow she waited for one of them to notice her but neither did, so she leaned against the door and listened to their conversation. "You can't decide that for her," yelled Sakura. "Scratch that previous thought, it was an argument. The sooner you accept it, Sakura, the better," replied Sasuke in a monotone voice. Now she was very interested. "And in any event, it's not me doing the deciding, it's the Hokage. He insists, but I'm on your side on this. She already has an infatuation with that guy. It still doesn't mean you get to be rude to the rest of us. I can take it, but the rest of the kunoichi aren't used to you and your brutish, rude ways. Tone it down a bit." "I don't see any reason to tone it down. They needed to hear it, so I told them since you let them think it." He gave her a pointed look causing her to blush again, yet she didn't allow that to faze her. Going back on track, how do we tell her? She's got a lot on her plate as it is and this will just be adding more onto it. What do you prefer we tell her first? That you are being told to get married by your parents? That the Hokage wants her to get married to the pervy Tsunagai? Perhaps that I was bit by Orochimaru and am now at his mercy? Or maybe that I care enough about the both of you that I could kill either of you in order to get revenge? I want you to tell me all those things. Some I know but some I need details," she said, causing both to turn their heads to her. Clearly they hadn't sensed her coming. She'd have to get them to work on that if they even had the slightest chance of passing the next round. "How much of that did you hear?" asked Sakura. Her face returned to its usual color and her voice didn't raise or waver as she spoke. She shrugged in return, "Not long. Just from when you stated yelled that Sasuke couldn't decide something for someone who I assume is me." Neither of them gave her an answer to what she was hinting to, so she crossed her arms and raised her brows. When neither of them spoke still, she sighed and walked over to where Sasuke was sitting and perched herself on the edge of his bed, trying to get a better look at the cursed seal. "We will be finishing this conversation later, so don't either of you think you're getting out of it." She raised a hand to move his collar down and folded it to get a full look. "So Sasuke, how does it feel to have Orochimaru's cursed hiki on you?" she asked genuinely, however her teammates groaned and both face-palmed. "You know that was the exact same thing Genma said?" asked Sakura as Sasuke muttered vengeance. "Well, he bit you and it left a mark. It's also cursed, so can you blame us?" She raised a brow and crossed her legs in her meditating pose. She had been training up her ability so stay in one place, so meditating gave her something to think about, Kurama's and hers chakra. "Oh, and please elaborate on this marriage business. I haven't been updated on that yet," she said calmly, however she didn't doubt for a second her eyes looked like waves crashing. They both shared nervous glances before having a silent conversation between them. "Well, basically. My parents want me to marry this guy from Kirigakure and the Hokage said he would agree if I agree. The other marriage is for you." She faded off thinking Naruto would go off on a rant, yet she remained calm, outwardly at least. "That Kankuro guy, he wants you two to marry in order to make the bond between our two nations stronger." Sasuke carried on for her. "It was proposed by the Sand siblings' teacher. What better way to unite the two nations by having the daughter of the Yondaime Hokage and son on the Yondaime Kage marry?" His eyes filled with mirth as he explained. Sasuke had never liked the system where one's marital partners were decided for them. Naruto closed her eyes and took a deep breath before opening them up. "Okay. I'll deal with my marriage thing with the old man myself. Why is Sakura getting married off to Kiri?" She quirked a brow as she regarded the other female of Team 7. Sakura fidgeted in her seat before sitting with her back straight. "My dad wants. You're a legal adult in the eyes of Shinobi. He can't force you to do anything you don't want to do. Old enough to kill, old enough to drink and live alone." The conversation was quite normal after that. Sasuke and Naruto stating they wouldn't let her be married off to someone she didn't want to, but then the conversation went on to Sasuke's Mangekyo possibility, to which Naruto smacked him over the head for even thinking she would allow him to kill her. There was a bounce in Naruto's walk as she made her way around the village. It was a day before everyone had been requested to return to the tower, and Kurama had just returned to his seal, making her feel a bit more safe. She had yelled at the Sandame once she had finished her conversation with her teammates, saying he had no right to marry them off. Well, he did with her as she was his ward and adoptive child, but still. He had apologized and stated it had been a mere suggestion that he would take in accord for the future, since the relationship between the nations was still on edge and an alliance like this would have secured them forever, similar to the Uzumaki and Senju clan being united due to the Shodame's marriage. She hadn't let him off on that and had yelled again about him not telling Sakura's parents they couldn't get her married off without her consent, and he had replied saying he had thought they would know, since a parent would want information about a job role before their child starts it. He had been shocked, though he concealed it well, that her parents hadn't known and called them into his office telling them shinobi laws. To say they weren't amused was an understatement. They had yelled for 5 minutes before she set off a large amount of ki towards them, and they had ceased their idiocy. No one wanted to upset the honorable daughter after all. She had also met up with Temari a few times during those few days, and the two blondes shared simple techniques or memories of their nations as Kankuro sat quietly watching them and Gaara stood in the back, brooding. She had approached him once and he had tried to attack with his tail, however Kurama's cloak had done her wonders to stop the attack. Another thing was the two boys hadn't figured it out, she was a Jinchuriki and she had been taking some time to study Gaara's seal. Looking at the seal made her want to vomit or claw her eyes out. It was old, crude and dangerous. It was no wonder Gaara was unstable, and that his mother had passed away not long after his birth. Temari had told her the story, and when she had spoken with Baki he had said Lady Chiyo had been the one to create the seal. The name had sounded familiar, so she had asked Kakashi-sensei why, and he had given her a fake smile, stating she was the grandmother of the Red Sand, Sasori, a puppet master who was Kankuro's idol growing up. Thinking of Kankuro made her think of how he was treating her. Apparently he had been told he was a prospective husband for her and had been cooing towards her. It was so innocent that she could puke. She would have preferred he be himself and leer at her instead. A plus side to this new turn of events, Gaara seemed to be in a worse mood than usual, which she liked to believe was him being jealous. That or he didn't approve of their relationship. She hadn't been paying attention to where she was going and had only started paying attention when a sudden stab of pain coursed through her side. She didn't yell out, but she did flinch and clutch her side. Glancing down she saw she was hit by sand. Looking up she saw 4 wide-eyed Suna shinobi. Baki, Temari, Kankuro and Gaara. She clutched her side tighter when Kurama began healing her and all 4 of them came rushing. Okay, Gaara walked slowly, but a girl could dream, couldn't she? We are so sorry Lady Uzumaki, spoke a frantic Baki as he rifled through his pocket, no doubt looking for medical supplies. She raised a hand and gave a bright smile, removing her hand from her healing wound as she did so. No need to get any medical supplies, Baki-san. My Uzumaki blood means I heal a lot quicker than you would think. The two siblings looked worriedly between each other, and once Gaara came over they moved to the sides of him as his eyes glanced her healing wound, however he said nothing. Baki looked to her wound also and furrowed his brows, clearly never seen someone heal as quickly as she was. She cocked her head to the side, smile firmly in place. It wasn't a very deep wound anyway. She was trying to get the attention off her. It wouldn't do anyone any good for them to put 2 and 2 together and figure out what she was. Wasn't that deep? Yelled Temari, whose eyes had yet to return to their usual size. We can see how much blood came out of that wound. There's no way that should have healed that quick. She pointed to her wound, which was nearly completely healed, and she made a mental note to thank Kurama for that. She shrugged and gave Temari a pointed gaze, and the other girl calmed down and gave an understanding nod. The others didn't press on the topic, and she was about to leave when a voice startled her, as did the hand on her shoulder. Apologies. With that the voice and hand left her, however she could feel the heat and her heart didn't stop racing. She was sure she was red in the face as she nodded her head and carried on walking hastily. She had reached Team 7's usual training grounds, however she still hadn't returned to normal. No one had told Gaara to apologize to her, no one had told him to touch her, and no one had told him to whisper it into her ear. The fact that he had done it on his own volition had made it, to her, a lot more intimate, and no doubt if she told Sakura, she would say it was in Naruto's head. That he was simply trying to stop her and apologize to her without others hearing, but she didn't want to hear any of it. You seem to be living in your own fancy thoughts as of late. She jumped, having not sensed his presence inside her head before jumping up the tree and sitting as she entered her mindscape. What are you on about? She asked. I would have to agree with your thoughts of the pink-haired ninja. Shukaku's host bears no emotions besides negative ones for you, and that's being generous. She scowled. Well, considering all you feel is hate for the Uchiha clan, I don't think you have much room to talk, do you? You giant fuzzball? She hissed at him. Not one to outdone, he growled with squinted eyes. I am merely helping you. That boy does not understand love and would never be able to love you. Of course Kurama was Kurama, so he threw her out of the mindscape and she received the image that he was going to sleep whilst grumbling to herself. She sat there, leaning against the tree as she thought about what everyone was saying. Her team, Temari, Baki, the Sandaime and Kakashi-sensei had all said the same thing, yet none of them stopped her. Naruto had only ever been able to learn through trial and error, and it seemed even matters of the heart would be the same. The thought made her deflate, however the images she had seen flashed in front of her again, and she was reminded of those beautiful teal eyes, expressing more emotion than she could name as he smiled at her. She shook her head, once again determined to not allow what people said to her to get to her. She would not stop perusing Gaara. They were so alike yet so different that they would make a good couple. She had learned things about the silent redhead despite his quietness. Granted, most was from Temari, however she had learned a lot about his behavior and mannerisms, such as when he was irritated with authority he knew he couldn't kill. His eye would twitch and he was thump him index finger twice against the palm of his hand. She was jostled out of her thoughts by three very loud voices. Looking down she saw Kanemaru, Moegi and Udon standing at the base of the tree, clearly yelling at her. Each supported red cheeks and large smiles, even shy little Udon. Smiling at them she jumped off the tree and ruffled each of their hairs. What's up? She asked once she had thoroughly irritated them enough. Big sis, what's this about you marrying that perv? Yelled Konohamaru as he and the others all pouted and crossed their arms. The sight was even funnier considering they all had red cheeks as well, yet she managed to keep a normal face. Just barely. She sighed and shook her head. It's nothing, Konohamaru. He's a prospective husband for me, just like Sasuke and Kiba and Shino or even Shikamaru. Although, I don't want any part of this one. If I have to marry a foreign ninja, so be it, but I can choose them all by myself, thank you. She gave them a nod as she crossed her arms, causing the three of them to unwind and chuckle. But big sis, the old man said you liked that scary red-haired guy. He whined as he latched onto her leg, an indicator he wanted picking up. Now Konohamaru, you ought to know better than to listen to the old man. She tutted as she picked him up and placed him on her shoulder and turned a bright shade of red. Shush, she must like him, Konohamaru. Otherwise she wouldn't be blushing. Yelled Moegi and she scowled and pouted at her. Girl code broken. Sis. Whined Konohamaru and she flinched. He was too loud and too close to her sensitive ears to be yelling. Her predicament was bad as it was, however the presence she hadn't felt earlier made it a lot worse than before. She yelped and placed Konohamaru on the ground, waved goodbye and shunshined away, all in 3 seconds. There were very few things that could get Naruto embarrassed, all namely being 3 words. Gaara no Subaku. The other was getting the talk from the Sandaime as well as his old teammates. That was just awful. Kaharu's had been the worst. Her face was red, and she cursed herself for not sensing him, Kurama for not telling her, and Konohamaru for bringing up the topic when there had been no need. Sighing, she smacked her cheeks in a desperate try to calm her cheeks, however her hands were too warm for that. Thankfully someone with hopefully cold hands arrived. She went over to Temari and gripped her hands and placed them on her cheeks. Thankfully they were cold and she let out a long sigh. This all caused Temari to look confused yet amused, and thankfully she didn't immediately question it. Okay. How comes we're using me as a refrigerator? She released her hands and gave an impish grin. I was talking to Konohamaru and his friends about Kankuro being on my never-ending list of potential suitors when he mentioned your other brother, and he just so happened to be behind us at the time. I shunshined straight here without even asking what it was he wanted. She whined and clung onto Tamari, who was grinning at her. She ruffled the younger blonde's hair as she threw an arm over her shoulder and the two of them began walking. You know Naruto. You're kinda like the little sister I never had. But I guess that sounds a bit weird since you're trying to date my sister. In return Naruto shrugged. It's not like family relationships like that are forbidden in clans. It's quite normal really. You're right, but the citizens would never see it that way if people of close relation married each other. The reason why it wasn't frowned upon was to keep the blood of clans strong. The most known were the Uchihas who hardly ever married outside of the clan, the same as the Hyuga and Uzumaki. However, the Uzumaki often married into the Uchiha and Senju as they all had similar chakra. Naruto stopped them and pointed them to Ichiraku's and Tamari went with it, having felt hungry after training. Hey guys, I'll have my usual and she'll have the same as me, just less. She grinned as the two of them took their seats at the counter, Tamari giving a blank face as she looked at the two of them cook and have a short conversation with her. You don't know how happy I am that Kankuro isn't here. I swear, ever since that treaty was thrust in the Sandame's face it seems your sensei and brother can't keep me alone enough. And it's only been like 3 days. She groaned and planted her face on the table which was nicely cool. Tamari simply laughed. He does seem to be laying it on thick but only since he wants the best for Suna, and he knows marrying you would be very beneficial for us. He really does need to act like himself if he wants to win you over. Looking up at Tamari she saw the other female's eyes were glinting. You know I would much prefer the attention from your other brother. Why can't people shove the treaty under his nose? She pouted as she sat up and crossed her arms, silently miffed by the situation. I could always put in a word to Baki-sensei, saying you would be far more complacent if it was Gaara. Naruto tried her best puppy eyes causing Tamari to break her calm facade and let out a few chuckles. Getting down to business Naruto looked on seriously. Speaking of Gaara, I wanted to discuss something about your brother's seal. Tamari gave a nervous glance at the Ichirakus and she waved her hands. Everyone comes to Ichiraku and talks confidential things and not a word of it leave the tent. So as I was saying, I need to see his seal again but this time not a picture but in person. If I find him I'll need to ask Sasuke for a few minutes as well but that depends if Gaara agrees. Their ramen arrived and the two of them started eating. Once Naruto had finished her first bowl Tamari spoke up. Why do you need to see it again and why do you need Sasuke's help? Well, the image you gave of it doesn't show me everything. I need a few other things off your brother as well if I'm gonna override the seal with a new one. I thought you were going to completely replace the seal? She shook her head. I can't fully remove the seal without Shukaku breaking out and Gaara dying. The best I can do is make a more powerful seal over it in order to override the old one. Then after some time the new seal will remove the old one. She waited for Tamari to nod her head before continuing. As for Sasuke, well he would make things a little bit easier for me but if Gaara says no then I'll have to do this part on my own. I need to see Gaara flow of chakra. Get a chakra sample and a blood sample. If Sasuke is there then he could see the chakra flow for me and tell me anything I need to know about it. His blood is something I need no matter what. Tamari chewed her lip as she looked cautiously at Naruto. Gaara, I don't think he'll agree. Unless he wants Shukaku driving his insane forever this is his best bet. The blood sample will break things down for me. If I don't have everything perfect I run the possibility of something going wrong during the sealing. The seal I make may not cater to something because I didn't know about it and that can have severe consequences. I'll speak to Gaara myself when I get a chance and tell him this. I'm sure he'll come around. She gave a large smile which caused a dubious look to take over Temari's face. I don't know, he doesn't really seem to like you very much Naruto. She threw her hands up in exasperation. Well there's nothing else I can do. Well there is, I can knock him unconscious or use my female wiles to get him to see things my way. She allowed her eyebrows to dance on her forehead leaving Tamari in a fit of chuckles. Tamari had just finished her bowl as Naruto finished her second one and paid for the both of them. As they left a figure came into light causing Tamari to raise her brows since Naruto had taken shelter behind her. Well little brother, what seems to be the matter? The sound of her voice left little to the imagination. She was enjoyed both of their discomfort far too much. Understanding what she was doing, Gaara glared at his sister as he spoke. They told me to come and apologize to her for having been rude initially. As well as to watch her to make sure nothing happened. Naruto's face thankfully didn't change color, but she remained behind Tamari. I was talking to your sister about your seal. Are you two free to come with me to my apartment? She asked as she looked over Temari's shoulder. Temari gave her brother a stern look, making sure he agreed. The plan to invade Konoha was going well, however it would go a lot better if Gaara had better control over Shukaku. It would go even better if she could stop feeling guilty. Every time she saw Naruto, a small stone would settle in the pit of her stomach as she tried to fend off the image of the younger blonde upset. It wasn't something she wanted to see, however she knew it was going to be reality. When that happened, she wished she wouldn't be anywhere near the blonde. Whilst Naruto may have an infatuation with her youngest brother, there was no doubt in her mind she would unleash the wrath of the Nine Tails on them all. She had however thought of another plan. If Naruto and Gaara became close enough, their father could ask for a new treaty to be drawn up where the alliance between the nations would depend on them. Whilst Naruto would surely have no problem with Gaara would. She would have to speak to Baki-sensei about this new idea. No doubt she wouldn't be able to do her duty for her village if the image of a desolated young blonde kept entering her mind. Her thoughts only stopped when the three of them arrived at a door. She hadn't even noticed they had been walking, never mind made it to what she assumed was Naruto's apartment. Upon entering, she could see a large mess of scattered papers, vials on the tables, desks, bookshelves and other things a scientist would have. However, when she saw Naruto's eyes gleam, she changed that assessment. Mad scientist was more fitting. Naruto ignored the pointed stares at her apartment and instead turned whilst giving them both stern looks. This is orderly, chaotic. I know where everything is and everything is clean. Just take a seat in the living room just through that door. Everything is plain. She made a grimace as she went to the kitchen to make them cups of tea and came with a tray of 3, placing them in front of them as she made her way around the room, collecting her book, pen and all the equipment she would need for this little test. She placed the second tray beside the other one on the table, causing both sets of eyes to fall on it, one set cautious and the other blank. Hypnotically blank. Shaking her head, she refused to allow herself to get distracted again. Right so, Gaara. I know you won't agree to have Sasuke here, so we'll have to go through a bunch of tests and samples in order for me to get everything right. There's no seals master here in Konoha currently, so this seal will take time, especially with the Chunin exams going on. Taking a deep breath, she opened her notebook and proceeded to point to everything on the tray. Right so, these are blood vials. One is for checking your chakra, the other for checking your affinity, and the last one is for several things such as compatibility with other things. Don't worry too much on that last one. The thing here is for you to infuse a bit of your chakra into it and it'll stay stored up in here till I take it out. The rest of this you can ignore, it's just for my future referencing. She waved a hand whilst Gaara gave a skeptical glance at the needles. To make sense of what my brother is not saying, basically, he's never had his blood drawn and doesn't know how the procedure works. Naruto raised a brow and shrugged before picking up. This is the syringe where your blood will go in, and this needle is called a hypodermic needle, specifically made for taking out blood. If you look at the tip, it is sharp enough to pierce skin and enter the vein or artery to collect the blood from. Does that explain it? Gaara gave a short nod, however that was the only indicator he gave to having actually listened to her. He seemed to be staring at her, for what reason she wasn't sure. As much as she would like him to be paying attention to her, it was highly unlikely. Your thoughts seem to be quite unlike yourself. Hush you. She took the syringe and needle as well as the cotton, then went closer to him. Right, to take out your blood I need one of your arms. It needs to be facing wrist up and your fist needs to be clenched so I can get better access to your veins. You'll feel a small pinch, but if you do feel lightheaded I'll stop and give you an energy drink. If you feel sick after, you can use this bucket. As ninja we get injured a lot, but whenever I go for a blood test I get really lightheaded for some reason. She shrugged and Gaara reluctantly did as she requested. 2 minutes later she had all 3 blood samples from him and requested he show her his stomach before and after he made the seal appear, and he did so. At the same moment she sent out her own to feel his chakra. She chose not to dwell on the feeling of it and more on the flow of it. It was the exact opposite to her own. Nodding, she looked closely at the seal and noticed something she hadn't noticed before and jotted it down in her diary before she forgot. Once again she nodded and grabbed the seal parchment to draw his seal on as she saw it. The picture was helpful, but it was someone else's handwriting. That, and she just liked having copies, so in case she lost one she could have another point of reference. This drawing also included little notes around it, however before she could finish Gaara lowered his shirt and resumed glaring at midair. Right, this should all be done in a day or two. Hopefully by the end of this week I will have made a dent in the new seal, and by the time you guys return to Suna, it should be completely done. Now general questions, would you like to go for a walk? Tamari as well if you're available? The elder blonde shook her head before stating she had to go and see their sensei before they were to due back at the tower, however she encouraged Gaara to go with her. Naruto had no malicious motives behind the walk besides getting the answers to questions he may not want his sister to hear. They began a small walk and began talking when they reached a busy area. So, I trust you've been sleeping well? She didn't receive a verbal reply, instead she received a nod, so she continued. Whilst you've had that small seal on, have you suffered from anything you don't usually suffer from? Sickness, dizziness, loss of concentration? He shook his head, so she once again continued. Is there anything you think I should know about you that may have some effect on the seal? He paused for a moment and looked to a stall before looking away. No. Nodding her head, they carried on walking together in silence. Tamari sat on the chair across her sensei next to Kankuro. I know Dad's working on a new treaty as to not attack, however we're most likely going through with it since Naruto isn't inclined to go out with Kokoro. She looked to the two of them and when they gave her nods she continued. Well, she just so happens to have a high infatuation with Gaara, and I think that would work out better anyway since she's working on making better ties with us. Well, if she was interested in making better ties she would agree to the original agreement. Replied Baki, however she knew she would only have to shove hard enough for him to agree. She's trying. Come on, give her a break. She clearly likes Gaara yet has been giving Kankuro a go. That takes dedication. He gave a contemplative look as her brother let out an indignant sound, refuting any and all claims about her implication. I shall send word to Lord Casecage about this, and will also have further words with Gaara. In any event, befriending the girl would be very useful for any future plans we could have. Tamari needed a clearer answer, so what do we do till then? Do we keep contact with Otto? Do we carry on how we have so far? Baki looked at her as if expecting those sort of questions from Kankuro, not from her. Which was quite obvious, but she didn't want to say she didn't feel up to their plans due to her relationship with the Yondaime Hokage's daughter, which would only cause trouble. Act like Otto is just another unknown village. Act like nothing is amiss. I have a meeting with the Hokage later today after the exams. Make sure you two and Gaara make it back to the tower in time. With that he got up and left the two siblings alone in the room. Kankuro was about to get up, however sat back down when she spoke up. I need you to stop pursuing Naruto. She doesn't like it and is on the verge of running each time she sees you. She knows you like her in a way, but she also knows you're only going for her more strongly because of our father. It also seems to be getting on Gaara's nerves. I'm not sure why since he doesn't like her very much, but it is, and it would do none of us any good to annoy him. She gave him time to soak in her opinion, however he still looked nervous. Our Lord Father specifically asked for me to pursue her. When Baki-sensei messages father and if he says it's fine for Gaara to do so, then I'll stop, but I'm still gonna flirt with her, that is just natural. She gave a sigh but nodded, knowing she wasn't going to be able to order her brother not to flirt. Flirting with pretty girls was like a second nature to Kankuro and there was nothing she could do about it. Like Gaara's second nature was to either threaten or to kill people, most of the time both. Thinking about it, out of the three siblings, she was the only fully sane one, and that made her feel a lot better about herself, but then again the spectrum of sanity wasn't very high, even if she weighed it against her father. 2 hours later Naruto was talking to Sasuke as they made their way to the grounds where they had to meet everyone else. The two were discussing what Naruto would do about the seal. The day Sasuke had been bitten they had made a counteractive seal over Orochimaru's seal that would help him control it better. Naruto had explained she wouldn't be able to remove the cursed seal of heaven from him as only Orochimaru's chakra would be able to do so. It would be possible but only if she extracted Orochimaru's chakra which was within the seal. That or if she ever met the Pedo hubby then she could get a sample. She withheld a cackle as she thought about the many different things she could do with a sample of one of the senins. Looking around the hall, she could see several people had survived the forest and made it in time. Teams 7, 8, 9, 10 from Konoha were there, the Sand Siblings team, and a team from Otogakure and another from AIM. She found it hard to pay attention to what the old man was saying and instead focused on Gaara's eyes. They seemed to sparkle the last few days. Nothing like Guy-sensei when yelling about youth, however it was so much more different compared to when his eyes were hard teal. She was snapped out of it when Sasuke began dragging her off the court and onto the upper court for them to watch what was going on. You know, I don't really appreciate being ignored. Hey Kurama, it's been a while. She mentally smiled, not wanting people to question her sanity for smiling out of nowhere. HMPH. It wouldn't have been a while if you stopped fawning over Shukaku's host and paid attention to me. She didn't give an immediate reply and instead sat down with her legs crossed before entering her mindscape. Kurama. Are you sulking? She held back a smile, however one would have to be blind to not see the mirth in her eyes as she regarded the Biju. Foolish Jinchuriki. I am the almighty nine-tailed fox demon. I do not sulk. His tails wagged indignantly behind him. Giggling, she made her way over to him and began petting his fur, eliciting a loud purr from the fox, causing her to giggle again. Upon hearing the giggle, he stopped purring and retracted from her, sitting in a ball as he glared at her. Minus when I am allowed to leave your seal, you are the only one I can communicate with. You have your team and family, I have you and myself. Ah, does Kurama get lonely without little old me? She cooed. She knew at any moment he would lash a tail out at her and the two of them would end up fighting for a long time. I don't know what the blonde girl sees in you. He grumbled, making her tilt her head till she got who he was on about. Maybe my charm? Kurama scoffed at her. What charm? Your chest? She glared as she covered her chest. Hey. That's just rude. There's more to me than my chest, Datbeo. Kurama carried on, ignoring her in the process. Then there is the middle sibling, all he sees is your chest. I would have to assume your chest is also the reason Shukaku's Jinchuriki pays any attention to you. Tsunade most certainly received a lot of attention because of hers. As does that Anko girl. I also have no doubt that the Hyuga girl will grow to have an ample bosom to rival the two women's. He was paying her no attention even as she yelled about his being a pervert right to her face. She hadn't been paying attention to time and HTE. Next thing she knew, she was being jerked back to reality. Sasuke and Sakura stood in front of her. Irritation marred their faces as she grinned sheepishly. Did I miss something? Sasuke's left eye twitched. Your match against Neji is next. The first match was Kin against Hinata. Hinata won. Choji was against that Zakugai and he had initially defeated him after he got called fat but collapsed before the proctor declared the end of the match, meaning he lost. Shikamaru's match was against Dosu. The best part was when Tamari pushed him over the railing. That was funny. That flirt Konkoro was against Sakura and he won against her using his puppets. 10-10 was against me and I won, but I will admit she was good with her weapons. Ino had gone against Gaara. He broke her leg when she tried to go inside his head, but she'll be fine. Then it was Shino against Tamari and he forfeited when his bugs had been threatened. Kiba was against Lee and that ended in a tie, but now get up and go to your match, woman. He shoved her down to the stairs and she glared before rolling her eyes and making her way to the arena. Neji was already there waiting, and just as Hayate was about to start the match she raised a hand and spoke up. Before we start, why don't we let Neji start talking? I refuse to fight whilst he monologues about fate. Hearing him go on about it once was bad enough. The room was filled with agreements in the form of words, cheers and grunts. Hayate gave him a chance, however when he didn't talk he began the match. Naruto, not wanting to subject herself to such a cruel fate, threw a tri-pronged kunai behind him. Her eye shined there and chopped the back of his neck, knocking him unconscious in the process. This of course elicited different reactions. Lee screamed about how unyouthfully his rival had fallen, several gaped faces, several blank faces, and a few people laughing it all off till they couldn't breathe properly. Brushing off the imaginative dust from her trousers and shoulders, she made her way to the waiting area where all the spectators were watching them. She stood between Team 7 and the Sand Siblings as Hayate summoned them all to the bottom to select a number. 7 Hinata, 1 Shikamaru, 5 Konkoro, 4 Sasuke, 3 Gaara, 2 Tamari, 6 Naruto. Naruto's eye twitched at the numbers, knowing she would be fighting 2 matches whilst everyone else would fight 1. Lucky bastards. The old man gave another speech about how the next round was in a month, giving them plenty of time to plan against their opponents. Her fights against Konkoro and Hinata wouldn't be nearly as hard as her supposed match against Gaara. She didn't doubt Sasuke's abilities, however even the Uchiha heir was no match for a Jinchuriki. She quite liked this matchup. It allowed her enough time to practice as well as time to work on the seals she needed to get one with. The best part of the next month would be that Jiraiya would be coming back to Konoha to train her. Correction, he was already in Konoha as of yesterday. She made her way to the Hokage Tower where she knew she had to be in order to officially meet Jiraiya. As she had grown up she had received letters from the Toad Sage and had on occasion sent one back whenever she could. She knew he was out keeping up with his spy network looking for Orochimaru which had led him to Akatsuki. She frowned at the thought of them. They were based in AIM and were hunting Jinchuriki, at least which was what Itachi had told them during his years as a hidden agent within their organization. The thought of Itachi upset her. She missed her elder brother figure just as much as she hated the citizens of Konoha for shunning him. Once again she cursed to the Sandaime for allowing the situation to have gone that far, yet she shook her head knowing there was nothing she could do about the past. Before she knew it she was in front of her godfather and a busty blonde woman who was tied to a chair, gag in her mouth as she glaring at the old pervert. I'm all for perverted things and all, but I think this is crossing some sort of line, Ero Senin. She spoke as she smirked leaning against the closed door. The Sandaime sat in his chair, shaking his head as he took a puff of his pipe, clearly amused over the situation at hand even though it looked to be very serious. Naruto, meet Tsunade. Tsunade meet Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, Minato and Kushina's daughter. Also the host to the Nine Tails. Tsunade stopped struggling against the ropes that bound her, which was when she noticed a seal preventing her from using jutsus to escape. She gave the honorable granddaughter a smile and wave before taking a seat next to her, knowing that somehow she would be here for a long time. That's all for now. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments.